So, thank you very much for joining us. Our webinar today is Mental Fitness for Employment Success, Next Generation Training for 21st Century Employment. Before we begin, I'll just run through some logistics. So audio is available through the phone line. The number there is on the screen, which is 866-246-4691. During the presentation, everyone is set to mute to minimize any background noise. Please use the chat box on the right of your screen if you have any questions at all during the presentation, and we will answer them at the end. If you're not able to access the chat box for whatever reason, you can email me any questions you have. And the email is gnagle@gettinghired.com. So that's gnagle@gettinghired.com. As with all of our webinars, we offer a live captioning service. The link is posted in the chat box, so you can just click on it. We will also, as I mentioned, be recording the presentation, and we upload it to our YouTube channel early next week. We'll also email all registrants a copy of the presentation and a link to the recorded webinar. So if you have to jump out early or you miss anything, don't worry, you'll be able to catch all of it later. You can also download the presentation and transcript in PDF, and also more information about the course, which this webinar is offering a taster of. When you exit the webinar, some feedback questions will appear in your browser. We would really love to know your thoughts about the webinar, so please let us know, what you think worked well, what we could improve on, and if there are any other topics you would find useful in your career development or your job search that maybe you'd like to see a webinar on in the future. And just quickly, I'd like to say a big thank you to one of our employer partners, L3, who sponsored this webinar. They're headquartered in New York City, and L3 employs approximately 38,000 people worldwide and is a prime contractor in aerospace systems. L3 is also a leading provider of broad range of communications and electronic systems and products used on military and commercial platforms. You can find hundreds of their open jobs in engineering, manufacturing, IT, management, and lots more on Getting Hired right now. So back to today's webinar. Our presenter is Jeff Garton. Jeff is an Association for Talent Development best-selling career author whose background is specialized in leading the global staffing functions of Kraft Foods and the Miller Brewing Company. Jeff wrote the first book and developed the first training programs that integrate the topic of mindfulness into the training of people for employment in this difficult post-recession era. During this webinar, Jeff will be providing an insider perspective on how staffing really works and what recruiters, interviewers, and hiring managers are really looking for. In addition, Jeff will also share his knowledge of research on mindfulness and how improved training on this trending hot topic has become essential in better preparing job seekers for the increased challenges associated with looking for work in the new economy. So, without further ado, I will hand it over to Jeff if he is ready to jump in.
Very good. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thanks. And I'm the presenter now, right?
Just 1 second. Passing it over to you now.
Yep. The slide advanced, so I guess we're doing okay now. Okay.
Yep.
We ready to go?
Yep, you go for it.
Well, thanks everyone for attending this webinar today, and thanks for Getting Hired for hosting it and to L3 for sponsoring it. Strengthening your mental fitness is what we're going to be talking about today to help you find jobs faster. And this topic relies heavily on training to improve how you think, which is a topic adults tend to shy away from because they believe they already know how to think. However, during the past 6 years I've been providing this training, I've never found one person who had the correct answers to all of these questions you see here. So at the end of today's webinar, I'll be sharing with you the correct answers. So let's get started and see if you can spot some of the answers as we move forward. As many of you know, looking for a job is one of the toughest jobs you can have and not want. You work alone and often without an income, and you're subject to criticism and rejections by strangers on a daily basis. You struggle with doubts and discourteous treatment, and it can sometimes feel like you're invisible, as if no one cares if you get a job or not. Training on the nuts and bolts of how to look for jobs is widely available from career schools, colleges, career one-stops, and a whole bunch of other places. But here's the issue with that basic training. The employment training you get today is not much different from what your parents and grandparents received several decades ago when they looked for jobs. Back in those days, when jobs were more available, all you needed was a refresher, how to write a resume, dress for success, deliver your elevator speech, and become a confident interviewee. And you were good to go. Not anymore. Those days are gone, and that's why I'm here to discuss some essential upgrades to the existing employment training. For employment in the 21st century, traditional job search training is still important to help you update your employment tools, refine your job search skills, polish your packaging so to market yourself via the internet and job fairs. However, since the Great Recession of 2008, job seekers have not been pleased with this training. They've been downright disappointed, as perhaps some of you are. And that's because it's the wrong training for what they need to be successful when competing for fewer jobs. For example, the existing training doesn't prepare you mentally or emotionally for the increased challenges posed by one of the worst job markets in U.S. history. And because job seekers lack some type of mental fitness training, this has opened the door for employers to neglect the jobless, claiming they're untrained to perform well. And that's what makes them unqualified for hire. The sad thing is, better training is available, but it's not being routinely provided to job seekers. But don't just take my word for this. The Pew Research Center was the first to point out the deficit in training for job seekers. Researchers there found that the jobless know how to look for jobs, and 4 or 5 more seminars on this same worn-out topic is not going to help them one bit. What the jobless need, they said, is more jobs, and until that's possible, they need better training to help prevent their attitudes and performance from deteriorating due to the increased challenges associated with the longer-term unemployment. Now, because this special training has not been integrated with the existing training, Pew says the existing training has become antiquated. And here's why. Here we go. Now, this slide is from the U.S. Department of Labor, and they found that a job can take 8 to 10 months to find. And your best chance of this happening next month is 26% is during the first 3 months, when you're still upbeat and optimistic and likable to employers. After 3 months, your chances drop to 12%, then down to 7% after 6 months, at which point your weariness becomes apparent to employers, and that makes you unlikable. So just as Pew reported, not everyone is mentally prepared to last the duration. The Department of Labor reports that after 5 months is when job seekers tend to give up trying. They either take a part-time job for the money, or they become discouraged and stop looking. So from the employer's point of view, job seekers lack the most appropriate training to ensure they're adequately prepared to persevere and perform well until they can find jobs, and regardless of their increased challenges. And this phenomenon and the high priority employers place on a job seeker's mental fitness to perform well helps us understand how staffing really works. So let's take a look at that. I'm referring to the gap in knowledge between how you're trained and what employers are looking for, which is one of my biggest pet peeves as a staffing professional. For example, throughout my career, not once did we ever hire someone because of their updated resume, polished image, their elevator speech, or practice interview skills. We hired, promoted, and retained people for their attitude to fit with our existing teams and their ability to perform well, regardless of any challenges. We didn't care about their job search training, but we did care about their apparent lack of training on matters that affected their attitude, perseverance, and performance. And here's what happens from the employer's point of view. This is how staffing really works. Staffing is a two-stage process. In stage one, recruiters decide which job seekers are the most qualified for consideration. Then in stage two, the hiring manager decides which of the finalists from stage one is the most qualified for hire. The training job seekers are provided helps make them discoverable to recruiters and facilitates their evaluation against the requirements of the job. The most qualified for consideration become prospects, and the best are interviewed to determine which should be referred to the hiring manager. In stage two, the hiring manager decides which of the interviewees is most likable against the job preferences and should become a candidate, from which an employee is chosen because he or she has the combination of right fit and chemistry for the job. Now, the important thing to realize here is this. Everyone who makes it to stage two is already qualified against the job requirements, and so their job search training becomes less important. More important in stage two is whether you can qualify against the job preferences, which has nothing to do with your job search training. Stage two is all about your mental fitness to persevere and perform well, and that's what makes you likable enough to hire. Now, are you seeing my slides are not advancing here. Can you see that okay, Gabby? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hi. Yes, sorry, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, I think we had some delays there in the software or something.
Oh, okay. We can see the those words that just popped up: discoverable, fit, likable, and chemistry.
Yep, for some reason it was delaying, but I think we're back on track now.
Yep, no problem. We can see that just fine.
All right. Now, for some reason, my slides are not advancing. Am I still the presenter here?
Yeah, you are. I don't know why that would continue
Okay, here we are.
Okay, there we go.
All right, so we got a little behind there. I don't know what happened technology-wise. So just to clarify, hiring managers minimally expect that all job seekers will be trained and smart enough to make themselves qualify for consideration at stage one. And if not, there's a high expectation placed on recruiters to ensure that unprepared job seekers are eliminated from the process so they don't waste the hiring manager's time at stage two. And this is why hiring managers don't care so much about your updated paperwork, waxed-on image, and practice interview skills. They want to know. They want to look under your hood to find out if you have the horsepower to do the job. And this is why many employers have adopted behavioral interviewing techniques to look beyond the good stuff you're trained to showcase to ensure you have the right stuff. Now, here's what this means. Let's say that among all the job seekers for a job, you have the best qualification for consideration. And although this might help get your foot in the employer's door, it may not be enough to keep you there. Not if other qualified job seekers have happened to be more likable than you, in which case your job search training won't help you. Now, here's the interesting part about staffing all job seekers should know about. If you're really likable, your employment tools, job search skills, or packaging may not matter as much to the employer. If they like you, they'll find a reason to hire you, and even if your job skills are lacking. They might offer to provide training to develop your job skills, but they only do this for people they like. That's how staffing really works. Employers hire whomever they like most. There's a term for this. We call it the Betty White factor. At over 90 years of age, Betty was getting more commercial endorsements and acting contracts than people less than half her age. And she didn't even own a resume. That's because everyone knows and likes Betty. She's got likability. Bottom line, your likability, as determined by your attitude, perseverance, and performance, always trumps your discoverability. And here's another interesting thing about how staffing really works. If you're missing the Betty White factor, employers will look for reasons to justify their decision not to hire you. Rather than say or explain why they don't like you, which is impolite, and can become awkward and legally messy, they say they found someone better qualified. And if you press them for an explanation, they'll find something wrong with your employment tools, your job search skills, or your packaging. So in effect, your job search training is not what gets you hired, but it's often the reason you're rejected. You see what we're talking about here? The existing job search training helps qualify you for consideration, but it's the wrong training to qualify you for hire. And because employers shy away from explaining the true reasons they don't like you, you don't know what to fix when you're rejected. And this lack of information can prolong your unemployment for several more months, particularly if you never had training on how to make yourself more likable. So now, let's discuss the type of training job seekers really need to improve their likability. And we'll begin by reviewing the scientific advances that have made better training possible. The majority of our knowledge about the brain and human performance was discovered within the last 30 years. And only within the last 15 years have we been able to learn more about the mind and consciousness. Now, these breakthrough discoveries were made possible by advances in medical scanning and resuscitation technology, and the application of that technology to how psychological research is conducted. Today, nearly every major university in the U.S. has a center devoted to the study of mind and consciousness, and this has revolutionized training to improve a person's attitude, performance, and even their appeal to others. For example, from scanning technology, we've learned that thoughts create emotions, and that emotions are what motivate us to take action. From resuscitation technology and studies on near-death experiences, we've learned that each of us is two individual thinkers. And believe it or not, one of our thinkers has the ability to survive coma and the death of our body. Here's what this means. From scanning technology, we know that whatever happens to you from the outside, including being jobless or rejected, that doesn't cause how you feel, your emotions. Whatever happens to you is random and meaningless until you think about it, when you assign it a meaning and react. You assign a meaning, which makes how you think, not your situation, responsible for how you feel. And because emotions motivate, how you think is also responsible for your ability to persevere and perform well, your likability. From resuscitation technology, we know your material brain thinks habitually in accordance with your programming since birth. And we know your non-material mind thinks intentionally and also independently from your brain. So when your body dies, your mind continues to exist, and we're still learning more about this. So be skeptical and do your own research. Both of your thinkers have the ability to create emotions, and you get to decide if those emotions are created habitually or intentionally. And here's what this means. Because emotions are created by how you think, your situation doesn't have to be good for you to feel good. So by learning to control how you think intentionally with your mind, you can create any emotion you choose without regard to your situation. You learn to become mindful of who is thinking, ideally your mind and not your brain, so to improve how you think. ideally intentionally and not habitually, and that's what gives you the means to make yourself feel good and perform well regardless of what happens. That's how you make yourself more likable, despite challenges posed by the difficult job market conditions. And here's why training on this topic of mindfulness is essential for everyone, and particularly job seekers. Ken Gilbert is a Harvard research psychologist. He discovered that the average person spends 47% of their day mind-wandering on autopilot, mentally checked out and not realizing which emotions their undisciplined thoughts are creating, driving yourself crazy. Now that figure can jump as high as 95% of your time when you're home alone, working on your PC, and when you have no set schedules or routines, which pretty much describes what happens when you're jobless. More than anyone, job seekers can really benefit from mindfulness training. Another Harvard researcher, psychologist, Ellen Langer, found that mind-wandering, or the lack of mindfulness, is the root cause of every psychological and physiological problem a person experiences. So to boost your mental fitness and likability, employers, it makes a whole lot of sense to start with training that improves who's doing your thinking and how, your mindfulness. Is this possible? The answer is yes. Medical research conducted over the past 40 years by a physician, John Kabat-Zinn, has confirmed that mindfulness training is highly effective in reducing stress and helping to improve your attitude, well-being, and even your happiness. Teresa Amabile, another Harvard researcher, found that improving how you think provides the foundation for boosting your performance, your creativity, and even your innovation, and that you have this ability is what employers are looking for. But what exactly is mindfulness? Mindfulness is a skill that requires learning how to discipline your mind's ability to think intentionally, and it results in your increased mental fitness. Kabat-Zinn's medical definition of mindfulness involves learning to pay attention to who's thinking and how, as opposed to allowing your thoughts to wander on autopilot. Next, mindfulness involves learning to keep your thoughts engaged in the present moment, the here and now, as opposed to ruminating about the past regrets or worrying about the unknown future. And finally, mindfulness involves learning to suspend making judgments about your unfolding experiences, as opposed to whining and complaining and unintentionally creating emotions that are unhelpful to you. How increasing your mindfulness improves your likability was discovered by Ellen Langer, who I spoke about earlier. Langer found that mindful people tend to display several characteristics that make them more appealing or likable to others. That the essence of mindfulness is charisma, which helps to draw others towards you and makes it possible to create and maintain longer-term relationships. The opposite is true for people who are not mindful. Mindless people tend to repel others. You prefer not to associate with mindless people because of characteristics that can be offensive. You'd rather avoid these people. Now, here's what makes mindfulness highly relevant to employment training. Langer's research found that your mindfulness characteristics are visible. You can see them. And mindfulness characteristics are preferred over mindless characteristics. And most importantly, you can't fake being mindful. Other people, including recruiters, interviewers, and hiring managers, can tell if you're genuinely mindful or not. And if you're not genuinely mindful, you're less likable. And you probably won't get the job when competing with someone who is mindful. You see what I'm talking about? Your chances of finding a job faster are improved when you receive training to improve your mindfulness. You learn to self-transcend or rise above your challenges when looking for jobs by learning to improve how you think. And this was the idea first proposed by Abraham Maslow. Most of us have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which he referred to as your deficiency motivators. He said we all want to achieve self-actualization, but to get there, you need to have your needs for esteem met first. But for that to happen, you need to have your needs for love met first. But for that to happen, you need to have your needs for safety and your basic physiological needs met first. Now, something not many people know about is before his death in 1970, Maslow added a new sixth level to his pyramid he called self-transcendence. That by controlling your thoughts to regulate your emotions, your mindfulness, you can persevere to succeed regardless if your earlier needs were not met. You self-transcend or rise above your unmet needs by learning to meta-motivate your emotional resilience. That's how you boost your mental fitness and appeal to others, including your likability to employers. So now, what have we done with all of this newfound knowledge about mindfulness to facilitate your likability, your improved attitude, performance, and appeal? Well, sports psychologists were the first to begin using this knowledge and mindfulness training to improve the performance of athletes. You might remember the terms inner tennis and inner golf, which involve improving your game by improving how you think. Next, the military began using this knowledge to improve the motivation of service members, but also as a way to treat symptoms of post-traumatic stress, which is activated by mindless brain thinking on autopilot. Next, hospitals across the country and around the world began using mindfulness training to help reduce the stress experienced by first responders. And more recently, employers like Google, General Mills, 3M, Apple, and LinkedIn, and others have begun using mindfulness training to improve the performance, engagement, and retention of employees struggling with work stress and difficult work conditions. And this trend is spreading fairly rapidly. Unfortunately, job search training was never officially upgraded to improve the mindfulness of job seekers. You're on your own to find out what makes you likable and to maintain your likability when faced with difficult job market conditions. So now, here's what's happening. The job market is flooded with job seekers that know how to look for jobs and are well qualified for consideration. But when you meet them, their weariness due to longer-term unemployment is apparent to employers, and it seems they're unqualified for hire. They never learned how to self-transcend their challenges. Without mindfulness training, how can you make yourself more likable when your mind is wandering about being jobless, unwanted, and rejected, and you don't realize how the emotions you're unintentionally creating are holding you back and weakening your appeal? So, to address this problem is why likability training was created for job seekers. To upgrade and supplement the more traditional job search training that's been around since before your parents learned to look for jobs. Beyond teaching you the mechanics of how to qualify for consideration, we're making the best use of our expanding knowledge of human motivation and performance to teach people how to qualify for hire and reduce the time it takes to find a job. This is now our third edition of this course for job seekers. The first edition was launched in 2011 for the state of Illinois. Then in 2015, we launched a second edition for transitioning military families. How important is mindfulness training to job seekers and employers? Well, from the employer's point of view, if you lack the mental skills to perform well when searching for jobs, they cautiously assume you won't perform well after starting a job. There's no justification to hire you, and your updated resume, polished image, and practice interview skills won't matter. Employers are quite serious about productivity, and here's why. In 2012 and again in 2015, the Gallup organization reported that 87% of the existing workforce is weary and unproductive. Employers in the new economy have no desire to add more weary performers to the payrolls. And that's why mindfulness training has become timely and relevant to job seekers. However, not all job seekers are enthusiastic about mindfulness training. When job seekers struggle with the emotional turmoil associated with longer-term unemployment, the last thing they want is another workshop, particularly if they think it's another repeat of how to look for jobs. And when you tell them it's training to improve how they think, they say they already know how to think, or that it's too difficult to improve how they think. The reality is changing how you think is one of the easiest things you can do because this requires no one's permission but your own. All you need is an incentive, and here it is. If you want the best jobs and to avoid becoming one of the millions of people who are marginally employed in part-time jobs, then get the right training to improve how you think. As for those who believe they already know how to think, that's when I test their knowledge with those questions you saw earlier. And then they inevitably discover they really don't know much about thinking. Remember this slide. Being jobless, neglected, and rejected doesn't cause how you feel. It's how you choose to think about these things that causes how you feel. So in effect, your circumstances are subject to or secondary to your thoughts about them. This means you don't need a job to feel like you already have a job. By flexing how you think, you can create any emotion you choose without regard to your situation. This is feasible when you learn to self-motivate by using your mind to think intentionally. Although you can't control your circumstances, you can control how you think to regulate how you feel about your circumstances. And that's the key to creating likability. So the question I like to ask is this: who is the boss of your thinking? Is it your brain or is it your mind? Here's what you need to remember. If you allow your mind to wander, your brain automatically becomes the boss of your thinking, and it does so without regard to the emotions your thoughts create. That's not good, because your brain is biologically predisposed to think negatively, and this can impair your attitude and likability with unhelpful emotions. The idea is to keep your mind in charge of your thinking so to create the most helpful emotions. And here's what can make this task challenging. Your material brain is a 3-pound piece of meat with a survivor attitude that tries to control you with thoughts that create the emotions of fear and worry. Your non-material mind, on the other hand, has no weight or form. This makes it possible for your brain to push you around like a bully. In fact, your brain doesn't want your mind to be the boss. It wants to be in charge of bossing you around, and only by strengthening your power of mind and mindfulness can you hope to take back control of your thinking. You learn to stop the bully and prevent the unintended creation of unhelpful emotions. Excuse me, I need to get a drink of water there. Or low-octane emotions. Now, rest assured that if you engage your mind in wandering, your brain is always on standby to guard against any dangers to your body. And so here's what you learn in our training program. To start the bully, to stop the brain bully rather, you need to wake up and become more mindful of who is thinking and how. Get out of your head and start living without all the constraints created by your brain. Stop examining your thoughts, ruminating about the past, and worrying about the future. You don't have to live in submission to your habitual brain thinking or confined to the comfort zones created by your brain. So here are 3 simple things you need to remember. Your thoughts are not you, your mind. They're just thoughts, many of which your brain just pops into your head. Your thoughts are not facts, and they're not commands. This means that not all of your 60,000 thoughts you process each day are intentional. The vast majority of your thoughts are habitual. You don't have to believe them all or obey them all. That's how you stop the brain bully. So now, let's pull all of this information together into a format we call the human propulsion system. These are the component parts of your human propulsion system. How you make things happen, starting with how you think all the way through to the impressions you create. Harvard researchers describe your inner work life as your constant stream of thoughts, perceptions, and emotions that affect the operation of your performance propulsion system. That your thoughts are the fuel to human performance and your emotions are the engine. How your thoughts fuel emotions that motivate performance, produce results, and create the impressions others form about you, whether you're likable or not. And it all begins with the quality of your inner work life. And here's how this works. The outputs of your inner work life and propulsion system enable others to form impressions about you. I think here we go. To judge you by your results, observe you by your actions, characterize or describe you by your emotions, and then identify or profile you by the type of mindset they think you have. And this is exactly what happens during the job interview. Within 30 seconds to 1 minute after meeting you, the interviewer has already judged you as being likable or not. They don't admit to this, but it happens. The rest of the interview is spent gathering data to support their decision. So the next thing they do is to begin to make observations of your actions and results from the resume and what they learned during the interview. Now, the HR or staffing department typically requires interviewers to fill out a comment sheet to record their observations. When they fill out that sheet, they are characterizing you by the emotions they're observing. And finally, they decide what type of mindset they think you have, so they defend their initial judgment or change their judgment. And this is why interviewers spend 2 minutes looking at your resume and then spend 58 minutes trying to figure out what type of mindset you have. What fuel are you putting into your engine to drive your propulsion system? Can you do the job and get the results employers are looking for? So here's what we're doing for the jobless and with the likability course. We're teaching you how to improve your inner work life skills, to think and to create the emotions, to improve the emotions your thoughts create, to strengthen the outcomes of your propulsion system. The slides are not moving here now, Gabby. Here we go. Improving your attitude, perseverance, and performance, and that's what makes you likable. And this training is a hot topic today because it's helping job seekers to combat the emotional turmoil associated with the difficult job market conditions, to make themselves more likable, preventing their longer-term unemployment. Now you know how staffing really works, that staffing is a two-stage process. Job search training only qualifies you for consideration, and mindfulness training boosts your likability to qualify for hire. You learn how advances in scanning and resuscitation technology have contributed to improved psychological research and better training content to help you achieve and maintain your likability, despite the challenges associated with a difficult job market. Finally, you have a better understanding of what mindfulness is and how to achieve it by strengthening your power of mind to think intentionally and prevent your brain from hijacking your thinking and unintentionally creating unhelpful emotions. Now all you need is the actual likability training course to teach you how to improve your mindfulness and find better jobs. Now, this slide here, I said we'd come back and I would share with you some of the results of these questions. Thoughts are electrochemical events. Thoughts are things, and they originate from your brain and your mind, the purpose of which is to create emotions that are used to provide your self-motivation. And on average, you process over 60,000 thoughts each day. And you can't control them all because there are too many to control. But we teach you how to control the ones that you can control. So there you have it. Anyone gettinghired.com refers to the online likability course will be provided a 50% discount off the regular price. So you're only paying half price or $80 for the entire 40 lessons, and this gives you full access to the Mindfulness Skills Practice Lab and all the videos, articles, learning exercises, instructional audios, and podcasts included in the course. Your handout includes instructions for registering and applying for the Getting Hired discount from gettinghired.com. Thanks very much for attending this webinar. Gabby, I'll pass it back to you now, and we can take some questions if you like.
Thank you, Jeff. That's really, really interesting. Yes, if you're able to pass it back to me, just right-click and select change role to, or pass privileges to. Yep, that did it. Job done. So thank you. We have a few questions. If anyone else has any more questions, feel free to type them in now. So we have one asking, what is the difference, would you say, between mindfulness and just positive thinking? Or is there a difference?
Yes, there's very much a difference. Mindfulness is just paying attention to how you think. And how you think, one way of how you think is positively. Now, you know, I used to teach how to think positive thinking, but when I would go into the workshop and bring this topic up, you know, I would get so much pushback from people saying, how in the world can I be positive when I'm faced with the lack of jobs, I'm running out of money? Get out of here. Positive thinking, that's wishful thinking. So what we talk about instead is being mindful of how you think, not positively, but in a non-negative manner about your circumstances. Learning to treat yourself with greater kindness, because how you think creates the emotions that can either lift you up or bring you down. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that's really much clearer. So it's really kind of more a comprehensive way of thinking rather than just pushing good thoughts or positive thoughts no matter what the situation is or what the circumstances are around you.
Yes, mindful thinking is, the other word for it is intentional thinking. Mm-hmm. Intentional for the purpose of creating emotions that are intentionally beneficial to you.
Great. In terms of your course, likeableforjobs.com, in terms of accessibility, a lot of people have a lot of different types of disabilities, so I'm just wondering how flexible the content is in terms of different ways they can access it. Like, are they able to get sort of different formats or, transcripts or text versions if they have problems, say, accessing videos or maybe some of the content in the course?
Well, the course is delivered via video lessons, and we have not found sponsors to help get us to the point where we're fully accessible to all individuals with all disabilities. But we provide a coaching number to help people through when they get hit a stumbling block or so forth, and we jump on the line to help them. We've learned to do this by helping veterans who are physically disabled or dismembered and so forth. So we're trying to figure out better ways to help people all the time.
Right. So if anyone does sign up, there will be a contact number or an email or something that they can reach out, and there will be sort of other ways that they can access it or talk to someone to get the information. I just want to clarify that for anyone who's wondering.
Yeah, if you're not getting what you need out of the course, you call that number. Somebody will get me on the line, and I can answer some questions and provide any coaching. I love this topic.
I think that really shows. You're very mindful of it. So we have another one. Somebody is asking, what is the best way that job seekers can communicate their Betty White factor in 30 to 60 seconds?
In 30 to 60 seconds, I would do it with a big smile. Big smile, and from within, thinking in a manner that creates optimism for you. And I think back to my own experiences. I grew up in West Virginia, and I worked for years to get rid of a hillbilly accent. And I got my first big break interviewing with the Miller Brewing Company. And I remember waiting for my interview with the director of HR, which was a super high-level position and very intimidating. And I sat there as he's reading my resume, I'm thinking all of these bad thoughts about, oh my God, don't look at my undergraduate degree from West Virginia. I'll have to put up with hillbilly jokes and everything. I'm thinking all of these things to make me feel down and blue and fearful and doubtful and everything. And then I'm just sitting there thinking, please, please, please just look at my graduate degrees, not my undergraduate degrees. Stay away from West Virginia. And when I'm thinking that, I look up and he looks at me and he says, so you're from West Virginia. And I thought, oh, darn, I'm dead. And then he says, you know, they used to beat us to death in football every time. And I thought, oh my God, this guy's from West Virginia. So you've got to manage your thoughts always to think, you know, to think intentionally in a non-negative manner to help yourself. So the 30-second answer to display the Betty White factor: smile, and on the inside, think non-negatively to boost yourself, and they will see it.
Great. That's a great tip. What are, you know, aside from joining the course, of course, which is very comprehensive, say in the meantime, or if job seekers aren't able to sign up for the course, what are some of the, say, first steps to finding out or to learning about how to be more mindful themselves? Are there any sort of practice activities or maybe anything you'd recommend they try doing on a regular basis?
Yes. Yes, I do. When you go to the course, the lessons number 1 and 6, I believe, are free, so you can get a preview of what you're going to learn. If you don't want to do this, then go to the Veterans Administration and Google, well, just go to Google and Google Mindfulness App, APP, Mindfulness App, Veterans Administration, and it will take you to an app that will teach you mindfulness. Now, there is a challenge with that app. You learn how to practice with exercises, but you don't know what you're doing or why. And so even instructors who use those apps eventually give up, drop their training, and drop out before they achieve sustained mindfulness. Now, we've figured out a way to get around that by teaching the difference between intentional mind thinking versus habitual brain thinking. And once you grasp that concept, bam, it helps you to reduce the time it takes to achieve mindfulness, and most importantly, it gives you something tangible that you're working with. And that's the only thing that you're not getting from these downloadable apps. You could also get a downloadable app or some training from Google.com. But again, their training is limited and doesn't teach you what you're doing or how. They just give you the exercises. Does that help you, Gabby?
Yeah, that's great. That explains it very well. And there's also, I know we included in one of the downloadable documents there, there's a list of resources and books and, you know, things like that, all about mindfulness, that I know that, you know, you have a lot of information from, and, you know, you use probably yourself in the course. So they can also, you know, once they read that article, they'll be able to see all sorts of different books and things that, you know, they can look up if they want to sort of just find out more about it, and, you know, maybe how it was first started and what other things it's being used for.
Yes, our training program is the ultimate guide to mindfulness for job seekers. We also have one for people with jobs. And so I think it's a very good resource to jump into. One of the things that I've run into with people who take the courses, you know, they have this urgency about finding a job, and they can't mentally relax to start going through lessons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so what we've set it up so you can jump around and go to either lesson you want to help you on any particular topic. And I always tell people, if you're in the midst of a job search and you want to get some tangible help to help you right away, go to our session number 4, which is all about staffing etiquette, what to do, how to do it, and when during each step of the staffing process to demonstrate your likability. So we literally tell you what employers don't tell you, what they're looking for, and if you don't know, you won't get the job. So that's what we call staffing etiquette, and we developed that over a period of 15 years when I worked at Kraft Foods and Miller Brewing. It really works. And then once you understand that and you start getting some interviews, you can go back to lesson 1 and go through all of them.
Great. Okay. Somebody's also asking, how long do the lessons actually take to complete?
Sure. Overall, there's, I believe, 40 lessons. Some may take 6 minutes. Some may take 10 minutes. Some may take 15 minutes. It just varies. But then when you're going through the lesson, what we recommend is don't try to rush through it. You can if you want, but then come back and download the accompanying or supplemental learning exercises, the additional articles, watch some of the supplemental videos. We've even included some self-hypnosis practice audios, guided meditation audios to help you deal more effectively with some of your challenges by, flexing how you think. So there's a lot of resources jam-packed in each lesson. You can buzz through them in minutes, but we recommend slow yourself down and do the work that comes with these supplemental exercises.
Right. I mean, I imagine it's, you're kind of trying to really discipline and train your brain, from habits that you've probably had all your life. So I imagine it's not going to be a quick fix. It's going to be, it's good that it sounds like your lessons are in sort of small, digestible, easy kind of amounts of time, but also it's something that, you've got to invest in and you've got to sort of be dedicated to practicing regularly and, really sort of putting all your energy into it.
Precisely. Mindfulness is a way of life. And one of the biggest problems people have in their inability to achieve mindfulness is they go to a course and somebody spends half an hour, 45 minutes giving a workshop on how to achieve mindfulness, and then they leave and they forget all about it. You've spent a lifetime developing thinking habits that do not get changed overnight. It takes practice, 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 and that's why we included the practice lab. So once a person enrolls in the course, they can go in and out, in and out, in and out as often as they want to reinforce their learning until they eventually achieve what we call a state of mindfulness flow, where you're no longer relying on the exercises, but we give you a formula to maintain your mindfulness on a 24/7 basis, and we show you how to do it.
Sounds great. There's another question here. I think you mentioned this earlier, but are the lessons free or is there a fee?
Yes, there is a fee when you enroll. The course is priced at $160, but the gettinghired.com discount is 50% off of that. So enrollees are paying only half and getting the whole course. If you're undecided about enrolling, take a look at lessons number 1 and 6, which are free, and see what you think. And you can even practice ones with some of the downloadable exercises in those 2 lessons.
Great. Okay, so it's definitely worth having a look because, at the very least, you can see a couple of the free lessons, and I'm sure there's lots of information on there as well that you can pick up. And it might be something that, you want to go back to at a different point. But definitely worth checking out, I would say. And one other question, is there any communication skills preparation you'd recommend for interview-type trainings in your lessons?
Well, once you work on mindfulness, I think that is a baseline foundation for improving interview skills. Once you understand who thinks and how you're better able to regulate your performance during the interview. So we don't teach you how to write resumes. We don't teach you how to dress for success. We don't teach you how to interview well, but we do teach you the etiquette associated to interviewing well in session 4. So really our work is really all about finding jobs faster by self-regulating who thinks and how in a manner that is beneficial to your self-motivation and an ability to deliver and demonstrate what employers are looking for. You know, not your resume, you know, not all of the, not your packaging or anything like that, but you, the person, the horsepower that's under your hood, and that's what we focus on.
Right. If there are no other questions, I'll give people just another minute to quickly type in a question if you have any more. But thank you so much, Jeff, for your time. It's been really, really interesting and such a unique webinar. We haven't done anything like this before, and like you said, you know, it's not a common job training out there at all, and it's definitely a topic that I know for sure is relevant to job seekers especially, but also, you know, it's something that will help you in your job search, but also you will literally benefit from in every other aspect in your life. So,
yes, you know, on that point, Gabby, people who have been through our training insist that their spouses go through it well. They end up saying, you need this training more than I do. So I'll tell you, any of your listeners, after they get the instructions, if they want to call that help desk number, if they have more questions, I'll be delighted to spend however much time they need to answer any further questions.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jeff. And as Jeff mentioned, there are some downloadable documents that you should be able to access now that you're actually logged into the webinar. You should be able to download the instructions for registering for the course and also some more information about the curriculum and what's involved, and also a lot of other resources that you can look at just around mindfulness and around some of the topics that Jeff's been discussing. Somebody's asking, you know, will they be able to see the PowerPoint slides? So yes, you should be able to download that. The PowerPoint is actually available in PDF format, but we'll be emailing all of the registrants early next week with the recording of the webinar and also all of the documents associated with it. So if you don't see it now, or you know you haven't downloaded it, don't worry, we'll include absolutely all of the information in the email next week as well. So almost 1 o'clock on the dot, which is great. Thank you again so much for joining, and thank you to everyone for joining, and have a great rest of your week.